Anyone who is married or has been married before or has been committed for a decent amount of time to someone, maybe on your way towards marriage, knows that mercy irritates. Chris and I are almost 12 years into this discovery that offering mercy irritates, aggravates, exasperates at times. Some of you are 35 years into that discovery. Some of you may be 60 years into that discovery. 12 years in and quite accustomed to this growing irritation, we decided to go to marriage counseling. Confession, the one who counsels goes to counseling. I don't just go to marriage counseling. I see my own therapist once a month. I see a spiritual director once a month. I see an ADHD specialist every other month. I'm a big believer in getting help when you need it. Perhaps that might be one of your Lenten disciplines this season. Mercy irritates, so we decided to go to marriage counseling. And the first thing she asked us to do was take this thing called the Enneagram. The Enneagram is this ancient personality tool, but not really all that like all the other personality tests you have taken before. There are 9 numbers, 9 faces of the soul, and each, it says, is in each of us. We have a little bit of each one in each of us, but certain numbers are heightened in each of us as well. And so Chris and I took the Enneagram, and I'm excited to take it. I love to work on myself, and I'm generally excited about everything all the time anyways. And Chris, not so excited, rather skeptical about it. I believe he called it that horoscope mumbo jumbo. What we did not expect, but what we discovered was that there's a reason why mercy irritates in our household. We are quite possibly the most disparate human beings on the planet. He zigs and I zag. He swerves through life trying to miss all the obstacles, and I take life head on. Don't really care if I hit anything. He constantly is checking his mirrors to make sure things are safe, and I'm oblivious to any cars or any people around me. Our therapist told me that Chris's high 156, I know you may not know what that means, that's okay. His high 156 would provoke a good amount of irritation within my 347. And our therapist told Chris that my 347 would spark a considerable amount of irritation in his 156. And I discovered that Chris operated quite significantly out of his 1 on this 9-number test. He's a reformer, I was told. Not a word I would have used to describe my husband. I have no 1 in me, I learned. Very little, maybe a minuscule amount. The 1, the reformer, is often called the good person, the right person. That's not me. That is not how I grew up. Chris, the reformer, the 1, sees how things could be and should be. He's quite the perfectionist that way, and I just did not grow up that way. I've been broken and have been breaking things around me ever since I was born. Chris always wants to make sure he's doing the good thing, the right thing. I just assume I am good and right. Our therapist told me that Chris wants things to be right, to be good. He wants the world to be a better place where people are a little less stupid than they seem. And so, Chris, the 1, the reformer, my therapist said he probably, sees and speaks to the flaws he sees around him. You don't say. He sees how things can be different, Michelle. How things are flawed and how they need to change. Did not need to take a test to know that. Mercy irritates It agitates. It sometimes elicits eye rolls. I was reminded of this encounter, this moment of fidgeting irritation in our therapist's office upon reading today's text. Because I believe here we have a reformer, for whom the church often offers irritation and rarely offers mercy, and for whom mercy irritates and also abounds. Did you hear it in the beginning? Because I think we often miss this line. Jesus said, a man had 2 sons. This isn't a story about one son. Somehow the pericope was named after this prodigal one, but Jesus says a man had 2 sons. This story is about 2 people. And the younger son says to Dad, Dad, I want you to give me my inheritance now. I want it now. I want my portion now. Normally an inheritance is doled out upon a parent's death. And the younger one says, Dad, you're living a little longer than I thought you would have, and I just want my money now. And what's amazing is that the father says yes to this, and he divides his wealth between his 2 sons. In the ancient world, the oldest son would get 2/3 of the wealth, and the younger one, 1/3, unless there were sisters in the mix too. The younger brother's inheritance, if there were sisters, was going to get sliced up among the sisters to pay for some dowries so that they would be more appealing for marriage. So the younger brother goes off with his 1/3 or less, and he indulges, and he parties, and he buys all that his heart desires, and he loses all of the money, and he didn't earn the money, he didn't know how to handle the money, and his life begins to fall apart. And when he finally comes to his senses, when he has run out of everything and is starving, when he finally comes to his senses, he says, at home, even the servants have enough to spare. What am I even doing now? What am I doing? He gets real with himself, like Chris and I getting real in that therapy office. This is not working out. Even the hired servants have room enough to spare. It's always amazing how lame kids think their parents are until they get out on their own. My parents got a whole lot smarter when I started paying my own bills. All of a sudden, I'm totally fine with off-brand cereal. So finally, he heads home. And while he was a long way off, his father saw him coming down the road, and filled with love and compassion, the father ran to his son, and he embraces him, and he kisses him. Dad, I've sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. And his father, choking up, stops him mid-sentence. Don't say any more. Enough of that. He adorns him with the finest robe, places a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. And this was not the robe he left behind. No, this was the robe reserved for visiting royalty and wealthy guests. This was the best piece of clothing in the household. And the ring, much like in a wedding ceremony, symbolizes the permanence of family, the permanence of connection. This thing is not broken, the father says. In the ancient world, one of the ways you could differentiate between who was a slave and who was not was shoes. So sandals were put on his feet. You're not my slave, you're my son. And in walks Chris, or the one, or the reformer. Jesus told a story about 2 sons. We've got the idiot, me, and we've got the kid everybody wants. We've got the kid who does everything right. While the party is just beginning, in the corner of the screen, we see the older son. And what is he doing? He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's back at home putting the toilet paper roll on the spool where you pull it from the top and not from the bottom, and loading the dishwasher with the forks and the spoons and the knives separated and all either turned up or down, but never mismatched or mixed up. Where's the older son? He's taking stock of the family enterprise and evaluating for efficiency and sustainability and identifying new ways that this thing can run better. The next way this family can be reformed, this business can be reformed. The older son is in the corner doing what he's supposed to be doing. doing the right thing, doing things well, doing things the way they were supposed to be done. The older brother hears the music and dancing in the house, and he asks, what on earth is going on here? Well, your brother, he's back, and your dad killed a cow. Let's celebrate. Are you going to come join the party? And the older brother would not celebrate. It says, why? Because it's not fair. It is not right. Why? Because mercy irritates. Let me tell you something this prodigal here has learned from therapy and my very good, very right spouse. For anyone who wants to be critical of the good people who always do the right thing and want it to be a certain way, maybe even to a point that it's a little bit maniacal, without them, there would be no Aldersgate Church. And subsequently, no Kingstown Communion. You know why? Because the older brothers, the Chris's of the world, they serve and they do it well. They show up because it's the right thing to do. They give because it's good to give. They're here no matter what because it is good and right always and everywhere to give thanks for such a community as this and the mission and ministry that flows out of this place. Some of us pray, I don't, God, know whether I really want to go to church today, feel like going to church this weekend. I've got to feel like it. I need to get in my yoga pose and sense it out maybe. I'll let you know. Not the one. Not the older brothers, not the Chris's of this world. They're just here because they do what is good and what is right. Thank God for these people. Thank God for you. They put their money where their heart and their mouth are. They trust the mission of the church and believe in her future because she has been entrusted to us for the good and right furthering of God's kingdom on earth. Our ones aren't going to the park or on a DC excursion or a family fun day or I just need to sleep in morning. They're here. Where's the older son? He's in the field working. He's getting the stuff done nobody else will do. If we didn't have people who attended to what is right, what is orderly, what is good, what is acceptable, can you imagine what the world would be like? I can. Having just completed financial peace as a Valentine's gift to my Enneagram 1 husband, I can imagine what my finances would look like without Chris. A train wreck. What if everybody just drove on the highway like I do? What are older brothers doing when they are behind the wheel? Driving. That is it, with like 10 hands-free devices and a Bluetooth connection. They're doing what's right, and while doing it, calling out every idiot on the road as they do it, convinced that there is a massive conspiracy for all the world's stupidity to interfere with your obvious righteousness. I'm learning, though, that Chris and the other older brothers and ones in my life are always vigilantly monitoring. They're the world's referees. Foul over here. I see you, foul. Mercy irritates. The older brother, it says, was angry, and he wouldn't go into the party. His father comes out and pleads with him. And he says to his father, all these years I've slaved for you. I've never once neglected to do a single thing you told me to do. I do everything right. I do what is good. The older son says, you killed the cow for the idiot kid, but I don't even get a goat. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering all of your money, mercy irritates. The father says to the son, look, you have stayed by me. Listen to me, older brothers, ones. God sees you. God honors you. God is worshiped in your diligence and in your faithfulness and in your righteousness. But, and hear this, God is not doling out love and worth and grace in proportion to how much you serve and how righteous you are in serving. God is not doling out love and grace because of how much you give. God is the God of the party. And mercy irritates and it infuriates and it's a nuisance and it's a burden and it's not ever fair. But God is the God of the party. And this brother of yours is as good as dead and is now alive, and we have to celebrate. Look, everything I have is yours, which is actually true. The fatted calf being given to the idiot son belongs to the older son. And what does this feel like to a Chris or a one or an older brother? It feels like stealing. We divided the estate. Idiot Junior is all out of money. I invested mine. How do you think the cow got fat? Anyways, Dad. And the father said, but we have to celebrate because this brother was lost and then was found. Mercy is irritating, but God is the God of the party. And I know you all know this. I know you know this is true because over these last 5 years, when you have supported Kingstown, what you've been doing is really joining the party, insisting on saying, this brother of yours was lost and is now found. The Kingstown Communion is Aldersgate's local mission. It's your local mission. Because it's where God's party is breaking out all over the place. It's funny, this word mission. It's used to describe so many things in the life of the church. Beautiful ministries like Sunday suppers, Rise Against Hunger, Phoenix Rising, ministries of compassion and justice. But when Jesus describes mission, when Jesus speaks of the Great Commission, he says, go out into all the world, to Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth, and tell of this good news and invite people to the party where the lost are found and where the prodigal is made right with God. Go into all the world offering mercy where it irritates us. Kingstown is your Judea, your Samaria. Here's the thing, we don't have many older brothers at Kingstown. The people we are in ministry with are primarily the prodigals. Perhaps this is why God sent a prodigal. The people who fill our metaphorical cafegimatorium pews are not the older brothers. They are those who have run as fast as they can from the family of faith, from the right thing, from the good life, because they have been hurt and wounded by a church that didn't offer a party, but rather onlookers, referees, calling fouls on them all throughout their life. At Kingstown, mercy irritates. And I've seen this lived out most profoundly in my relationship with Scott. Regularly, we gather at Fiona's Irish Pub. We call it our third chapel, Island Creek, Knowles Produce, Fiona's. Regularly, we gather there at Fiona's for pub theology, for Good Friday at the pub, for Ash Wednesday at the pub, for beer and hymns. And Scott is almost always there, nursing a seltzer water in the corner, listening from a distance. Almost 2 years ago, Scott hit rock bottom. And he was hurled into Alcoholics Anonymous and a sobriety that he has miraculously maintained ever since. And Scott has tons of friends at Fiona's. He's kind of the life of the party. Scott is a regular, but his friends he's made there are not particularly interested in helping him with his transformation. And so he steals me away after pub theology to catch me up on this latest milestone in his journey and retell the story of how, as he puts it, he left one party to join another one. One evening, after some time with Scott, I got up the courage to invite him to worship one Sunday morning. I'll never forget his answer. With hesitancy, he replied, I've been to church. I've been to church before. I think AA is more my speed, actually. Don't get me wrong, the people are always pleasant. But church always seems to be trying to keep the norm stable. And I don't need a pat on the back. I need a new life now. And I understood that. Guarding the good and right thing, keeping the norm stable is what the church has done well for decades. But I knew that wasn't Kingstown. And I knew that was not Aldersgate. Kingstown is your local mission because you decided 5 years ago not to keep the norm stable. Not to just do the good and right thing, but to offer mercy until it infuriates, until it irritates. Of course, without the older brothers, without those Enneagram 1s who reflect the goodness and righteousness of God, Aldersgate would not exist and Kingstown would not exist because of that. Do we need more prodigals in the world? No. We must praise God for those people who do what's right and what's good, what's noble, what's perfect, and who hold the rest of the world under a microscope expecting the same. But the way that God is calling the good and right church, the older brother church that only maintains the norms, the way God is calling the church out of darkness and into light this Lent is through the new thing God is doing in places like Kingstown because of places like Aldersgate, places that join the party, the feast where the lost are found, because we have to celebrate. Because this brother of yours was as good as dead and is now alive. He is lost, but he is now found.